colonies have been left in smouldering ruins, raised to ashes by attackers that promise friendship in the vast void. Corpses left as ash across a dozen worlds, their existence almost completely eradicated by the invasive procession of their once welcoming neighbor. Where proud structures once stood against the frontier, cracked bones sat in silence under clouds of death. In orbit, transponder pings of broken ships sang out into the cold eternal night. The frozen corpses of their crews revolved around the shattered metal hulks they once called home. Their resting places to be forgotten as their beep, beep, into the eternal night grew ever softer. Close to the heart of their civilization, Commodore Rakin sips Prosecco tea as he examines the holographic map being displayed across the tabletop before him. It shows their progress into human space, as of the last reports from the front. All the systems they currently own and occupy were highlighted red, while the enemies were blue. From his end of the table, it looked like the Genosian Republic was extending a crooked, hairy tendril right into the heart of human-occupied space. Purity's reach into the heart of corruption. After that terrible first strike, it was only right. Soon, they'd have the human cradle world, and with it, the humans would have no alternative but to submit, and answer for the atrocity they committed at Ostai. A soft patter of footsteps would disturb his tranquil meditation, drawing Rakin's attention to a new entry into the station's command center. The familiar figure on their way to their post was none other than Teresa, one of the many officers involved in information processing. More importantly, though, she was a close friend in need of help. Loose papers under her arm, uniform crumpled, and with her head tendril sticking out at awkward angles, it appeared as though she spent another night obsessing on that conspiracy theory of hers regarding the beginnings of the war. A distracting side hobby of hers that got her sent back from the front lines. She used to be an up-and-coming officer when they were both the rank of lieutenant. He continued going up while she stumbled and ended up drifting from post to post. If it wasn't for him, she'd have been dishonorably discharged with a permanent black mark on her head. To have a tendril on one's head permanently locked to a singular color was bad enough. To have it marked black for the rest of your life was another thing altogether. It told everyone you weren't to be trusted, that you were a danger, that you were the enemy even if you were one of us. It was the worst fate one could be given in their society. Setting his cup down, he straightens himself and makes his way over to her terminal to have a chat. He is determined to help her out of this rut, not just for what she'd done for him when they were recruits, but for what she's meant to him through all these years. Nearing her position, he notices the mild shift in her skin tone, signaling her awareness of his approach. It would be confirmed with her speaking before he could. "If you're here as my commanding officer, I know I'm late. I'll stay back to cover the time owed for my tardiness. If you're here as my friend, I'm sorry for missing dinner last night." Rankin shakes his head as he reaches over her shoulder to pluck one of the loose papers she brought in and had left sitting at the edge of her terminal. It was filled with mathematical formula he recognized as spatial jump coordinates for ships. An antiquated system used by ships to traverse great distances a long time ago, before the discovery of the hyperlinks. They were risky maneuvers, requiring immense precision to increase your chances of appearing on the other end to even a point above zero. What stuck out to him was not that she'd done the calculations by hand, but, according to them, the chance of successful transition through said jumps was less than 1%. "I'm here as your friend, Teresa. I'm worried about you. I've entertained your eccentricities since you came here because you promised they wouldn't affect your duties like it has at your other posts. If it is starting now, I think it would be best if we nip it in the bud, wouldn't you agree? It would be in your best—" "Ha!" She scoffs loudly enough to startle another officer seated nearby. "It would be in my best interests? Really? That's a load of crap and you know it, Rankin." Her words drip with such hate, It nearly made the hulking commanding officer flinch. "It is Commodore Rankin, Officer Teresa. We're in public, yeah, I remember. Honestly, I'm starting to not care, Commodore Rankin." "Teresa, you've been obsessing over this nonsense since PD-21. Look, everyone across the Republic, civil servant or not, were affected badly by the news reports about it. The humans destroyed that entire colony for no reason whatsoever. I know you had a distant relative there, but it was not like you could have done anything about it. I know I was lucky, and I know I should have reached out, but we declared war not long after, and I guess I forgot. I am sorry I wasn't there when you needed a friend, but I am here now, and I am not going to let you torch your last chance." He continues to stare at the back of her head, as she lightly trembles, and her skin tone subtly changes. But it all stabilizes shortly after a soft ping rings out from her terminal. It will be followed by her balled-up fist slamming down upon it. He peeks over her shoulder, seeing the error pop up, displayed in bold letters across the cracked screen. The lockouts he had put in place this morning, after she failed to report during roll call, were working as hoped. "I am sorry, but I can't have you accessing data you have no reason to access. You were on this same self-destructive cycle at your last post. I am not going to let you do this to yourself here. There is nothing there. The human vessel slipped out of reach of the responding fleet at Ostai. We responded by attacking their founders at PD-21. Warships being refitted were all that was there at PD-21, and we were lucky to have made it there before they went for the capital. The claims of the system being a frontier colony are untrue. You were an investigator on board the Rumoric at PD-21, for crying out loud. Your colleagues at the Investigative Bureau went after the traitors who claimed otherwise, in an attempt to sow dissent and start riots against the government. The last one of these scoundrels was charged as of 2 months ago. Are you trying to end up like them? They were liars, the whole lot." Rankin was nearly yelling at this point. But what Teresa said next nearly had him screaming at the top of his lungs in frustration. "What if they weren't the liars? What if it was us who did?" Catching sight of the subtle shifts of colour tone of the other officers seated at their stations close by was the only thing that stopped him from screaming. They were being overheard, and he didn't want this getting out, no matter how good a Genosian he was. "Lying to us!" Rankin took half a step forward, spitting the words out with such disdain they might as well have been poison. Teresa had truly gone off the deep end if she could declare such things, where listeners might eavesdrop. The government never lies to its people. That has been the motto of the Genosian Republic. All children are taught the importance of being truthful, not only to themselves but to everyone around them. From families to friends. You can never be considered a good Genosian if you've told a lie, and a good Genosian was what everyone strived to be. However, no society could ever survive like that. It is natural for kids to keep secrets from their parents, spouses from one another, the salesman to their clientele. Telling half-truths is one of the many minor evils within Genosian society, and though frowned upon, is not criminal. Fortunately, though such evils are present in all strata of their society, the civil service is believed to be exempt. The Genosians believe that to serve the people, one is required to be the best possible version of oneself, and as such, amongst other things, a civil servant is said to be inherently unable to lie. To think that a high-serving individual such as an admiral, or even a senator would lie, not only to those around them, but their entire population, that wasn't just blasphemy, it was treasonous. Using his larger frame to act as a wall between them, and those close enough to have possibly heard the treacherous remark, he whispers as softly as he can, "Stop it. I warn you now, Teresa, do not spew such disgusting accusations. The government would have never lied to us about the tragedy at Ostai. The humans attacked us after we offered them friendship. In return, Admiral Gantra led the fleet to that decisive blow at PD-21. Unlike our treacherous neighbours, we didn't target the innocent. All civilian vessels were given the chance to leave the system when we attacked. Only military targets were destroyed." "Oh, really? Is that what you believe? That dribble? Gantara wasn't the hero you portray him to be. What makes you think the way you do, Rankin? Seriously. How can you believe that he didn't falsify his reports to make himself look better? Why wouldn't he hide the... Teresa, are you insane? Are you? What could have possibly happened to you that your mind is filled with such disgusting beliefs? You're a servant of the people, Teresa. You know better. It was at this point that Rankin would notice something sticking out of the stack. Do I? Do you want to know what I think of our servants? Do you really want to hear what I think of this war? Teresa spat back, her tone growing louder with each declaration, getting too loud once again for Rankin's comfort. Prodding the pile with just enough pressure to get it to topple, Rankin bites back a gasp at what he uncovers. Noticing the changing colour tones of several individuals seated further away, he grabs Teresa by her forearm, along with the paraphernalia. The act invites more attention to them, eyes staring at them from across the entire room as he walks the struggling Genosian female towards the observation lounge. On a normal day, the lounge would be a serene place for reflection and relaxation. Clear alloy bulkheads ran down the length of the room, providing any who used the space with a spectacular view of the pristine world they were blessed to orbit. Khasana was a paradise-class world, a revered holy world to the Genosian people, a place that was said to mimic what their afterlife was like. Twice the size of all habitable worlds across Genosian and human territories, boasting a comfortable 0.9 gravity with 0 axial tilt. A thin ring of ice and rock girdles the equator, floating in the opposite directions to its rotation. The way the light reflects off the ring causes a soft aura to radiate around the planet, making it appear ever more paradisal. Being such a revered world within their society, none were allowed on the surface without a permit from the government. To obtain such a permit would require an immense amount of service to the Republic that to date, only a handful of Genosians can boast of having set foot on Khasana soil. At this moment, the atmosphere of serenity became strained with anger as the two Genosians hashed it out within the empty space. Are you joking, Teresa? After all I've done to save your commission, to get you here, you spit on all of it by having such things on your person? The Truth Seekers? Seriously? They're anarchists. They embody every sin known to us, Teresa. They're liars. Rankin crushed the flyer in his hand as he spoke, shaking his head as he steps away from Teresa and towards the bulkhead. They aren't liars, Rankin, Teresa sighed, as she watched her friend pull away with such disgust at her presence. His colour spoke the words he held within, and she could read him like a book. She always could. Nothing they've announced has ever been a lie. Every document, every picture, every word they've shared has been the truth. They might stretch the truth a little at times, but they've never misled anyone. Oh yeah? So you're telling me their ramblings have all been true? That we've been fighting a war we initiated? We offer them friendship, Teresa. They were the ones who spat in our faces with what they did at Ostai. The humans aren't the monsters of this story, Rankin, Teresa approached, resting her hand on her friend's shoulder. Why do you think you're here and not out there commanding a ship at the front? Why are you, a Commodore, commanding the station orbiting heaven? A station that is nothing more than a filing office. What the hell are you talking about, Teresa? I earned my position. Others would have given an arm to be on a ship at the front line defending their families. Given an arm to be on a ship blowing a human vessel into pieces. Not here, watching over heaven without ever hoping to touch it. Everyone posted here is the same, Rankin. You've just never noticed. When you don't do what is asked of you, when you stick to the very principles they taught you since young, when you do your damned hardest to be the best Genosian alive, they send you here as punishment. Your career forever stalled with only the sight of heaven to remind you of what you've lost. Rankin stared at Khasana, floating before them, then at Teresa's reflection standing just beneath it. Just like how she could read him, he could read her nearly as well, and he knew she truly believed every word she was telling him. In another life, maybe, they could have been mates. I refused to sign the edited report of what I discovered at Jezport. They reassigned my commanding officer and I got this promotion. Teresa nods sadly. I signed the report they gave me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but the guilt from what we did ate me up inside. The reason why I know the truth seekers are telling the truth is because I was the one who fed them those documents. I've never slept better since. What does all of this have to do with that pile of papers you brought in? Riddled with spatial jump calculations that you were so afraid to input into your personal tablet that you did them all by hand. Rankin glances over his shoulder at his companion, who is examining her watch. She catches his gaze and smiles. He smiles back while she nods to Khasana. He turns his attention back to it as a fleet of ships arrives in orbit around it. That's the flagship. Admiral Gantara and the captains of the ships at PD-21. They're headed back to the front after their refitting. Rankin utters out mindlessly as the unthinkable happens. Like a rogue star, it skates across the heavens at unimaginable speeds. The laws of physics bend around it, making the very fabric of the universe tremble in its wake. Forged in the flare of their home star, its body was fused with the ashes of the unjustly demised. Their names are carved into every inch of its surface, screaming to any who would hear. It would pierce Khasana's atmosphere in an angry, fiery glow. With so many souls to be accounted for, one shell wasn't enough. The first was followed by a second, then a third, then a fourth, and then the last. Their hardy shells pierced the planet's crust with ease, their immense momentum carrying them through to the liquid core in a matter of moments. All Genosians witnessing the event stare in shock at the sizable scar left on the planet's pristine surface by the 5 objects. They will be witness to an even greater sight as the minutes ticked on and the shell sank closer to the core. Khasana's thick mantle was made of a single unbroken piece. It prevented the world from suffering quakes, even now as it was struck from up high. Cracked, but otherwise undamaged, spared the sizable crater left on its surface, the interior planetary pressure remains unchanged. The first shell reaches the point where its integrity can no longer withstand the pressures acting upon it, and cracked. The liquid metal seeps through the cracks, reacting with the vial of antimatter within. The detonation sends an intense wave outward, causing the second shell to rupture and detonate in a similar manner. The third follows soon after, then the fourth and finally the fifth, just as it crosses the threshold between the mantle and the liquid core. The pressure will be too much as the planet begins to shake. Cracks shoot out from the point where the 5 shells have pierced its mantle. Magma streams burst out, setting everything it touched on fire. Rankin would fall to his knees as he watched heaven burn and finally explode, destroying the small fleet of ships with it. Teresa would keep her hand on his shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. The people at Ostide died because of our own government's failings. We killed innocent humans for nothing and hid the atrocities we committed. Now they've burnt heaven in retribution. Was it all worth it?